Hi everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. Today I'm sharing with you my peach harvest and how I am processing and preserving those peaches. So I've got here part of a big bowl of the peaches that I harvested. So on Saturday evening, as I have been doing in the evenings of late, I went outside to admire the peaches, and I found that the entire area around that peach tree smelled so wonderful, just like ripening peaches. And in hindsight, being 2020, I probably should have harvested those peaches right away, because if I can smell them, then I'm sure all the creatures in and around my garden could smell them too. And it proved too tempting, because during the night at some point, some small creature, small mammal, I think, not a bird, climbed up into the tree under the netting and ate quite a few of the peaches. This animal ate at least a portion of about a dozen peaches, which is kind of annoying. I wish if it was going to eat them that it would at least have the decency to finish the peach rather than taking a bite out of one peach and tossing it aside and then starting to nibble on another before it moves on to yet another. And so I had about a dozen partially eaten fruits. And so I decided on Sunday morning that I was going to have to just go ahead and harvest all of them at the same time. And I had hoped that I could just do it a little bit at a time, because the peaches stay fresher for a little bit longer on the tree. So I was just choosing the very ripest ones every day and leaving the others to ripen. But obviously I couldn't do that anymore, because that animal was certainly going to come back the next evening since it had found my prize peaches. So I had to get them off the tree and safely into the house. I brought out my biggest bowl thinking that I would never fill it completely up, but I did, and then some. I had way more peaches than I realized out there that were ready. These peaches are so delicious. They are the Desert Gold variety, and I highly recommend that variety. Last year I wasn't able to get a harvest because we had a late frost and all of the tiny little fruits dropped. But this year I got a bumper crop. This is the second year for this tree. I had made a short on this earlier, and a couple of people were asking me what size the tree was when I planted it. And it was in a 15-gallon pot. So it was a little bit bigger tree. And then I've had it planted in my garden for 2 seasons now. And so the second season I got this harvest. And I was actually online on Tucson backyard gardening, and I saw somebody shared a post of their peach tree, which was 8 years old, and it was unbelievably loaded down. So I'm really looking forward to how productive this peach is going to be in future years. All that being said, I'm going to take the remainder of this bowl of peaches and I'm going to show you how I make peach jam. I have been preserving these peaches in 3 different ways. I have been cutting them into sections, putting them onto a cookie sheet and freezing them in my freezer, and then that allows me, once they're frozen, to put them into a bag where they can stay nice and loose rather than being stuck into a clump. If I would have put them freshly cut into a Ziploc bag, I would have never been able to separate them as I needed to use them later on. So I wanted to make sure that I had the ability to just take out a few as I needed them and to leave the rest in the bag. So that's why it's really important to freeze them on a cookie sheet first, so that they're nice and loose and frozen separately. The next thing that I am doing is I'm making some peach jam. I'm not making a whole lot, probably maybe 4 or 5 pints of it, but that should be plenty, because we just don't use that much jam in my house. We probably use fruit fresh more often than using it in a jam or a jelly or a preserve kind of way. The last thing I'm going to be making with these peaches is a peach cobbler. Cobbler is my favorite dessert. I've shared that before. I just think it is such a delicious way to use freshly harvested fruit, because the fruit takes center stage, and then of course you get a little bit of the topping too, but the fruit really is the star of the show, and that is where most of the flavor lies. And I think they're such treats to make cobbler with fresh blackberries or apples or peaches or whatever fresh fruit you have coming out of the garden. It's just a really great way to enjoy that fruit fresh and to still have that flavor without being completely loaded down or hidden by pie crusts or too much sugar or what have you. So that's the last way that I'm going to be using these delicious peaches. I know that this is not my typical gardening content, but harvesting and preserving things that we grow out in our gardens or get from the farmer's market is a really important part of gardening. So I thought that I would share how I do that with you in case you want to have some ideas. I have had a lot of people give me ideas on how to use these peaches, and you all are so creative. I have gotten some really good ideas, which I will probably try as well with some of the frozen peaches later on, but it's a little overwhelming to try to use pounds of of peaches all at once. So I'm trying to pace myself. When I cook, I like to have everything kind of prepped and laid out. So I've got my peaches, I've got the bowl for my pits, and then I've got the bowl to put my freshly cleaned peaches into. That way I can just kind of make an assembly line and not have to worry about getting up with messy hands to go get anything. If I could send you the smell of this, if video had a smell function, I think you would be in heaven just as much as I am, because these smell like the sweetest peach dessert I have ever had. So for these desert gold peaches, I'll just show you because they are lovely. Let me see if I can twist. Oh, that juice is just dripping right out. But look how cute those are. Those are like peach color and a bright, rich red color all swirled together. Such pretty fruits. And when they're ripe, they really come apart super easily. So let me just take this pit out. The pits on these are pretty small. I find that if I cut them in half, I can get one side off, and then I'll cut the other side in half so that I can easily just take out this pit like that and drop it into the bowl. And then I'm just going to slice these a little bit. So for the cobbler, they just need to be in slices, and for the jam, they need to be finely chopped. So right now I'm just going to be doing slices, and then that way I can take out the slices that I need for my cobbler, and then for the jam I will just finish with a rough chop. And they're so ripe and juicy, almost a little easy to mush when I'm taking these seed pits out, that I'm trying to be a little bit careful. The hard part is going to be not eating half of them as I'm cleaning them, because these are so tempting. So this desert gold peach was developed in the late 60s in California, and so many really interesting plants are developed in California or Florida. And it was supposed to be kind of an answer to being able to grow peaches in a very hot climate for people that wanted to do so, because it has a low number of chill hours required. And in the Tucson area, what you need to look for when you're looking for a fruit tree is something that requires less than 300 chill hours. So just to put that into perspective, in climates that get incredibly cold and have long, harsh winters, you may select an apple tree that needs 1,500 chill hours. But here in Tucson, really the goal is to get something that needs about 300 or less. That's fairly easy to do when it comes to things like fig trees or pomegranates, because those really thrive in hot climates in general. So you have to be careful here in southern Arizona, because if you choose a fruit tree variety that needs more chill hours than we receive, then you're not going to get very much fruit, if any fruit at all, from certain trees. So the desert gold variety is one of those varieties that does well here because it gets a low number of chill hours. There are a couple of other varieties of peaches that do really well here for the same reason. One that I'm thinking of is the Florida Prince. That is a really popular variety that people will grow in the southern Arizona region because it does so well in the heat and produces so many peaches. Now, I don't have one of those varieties, so I cannot vouch for how it tastes or how productive it is. Other than that, I have seen videos and posts and read articles from other people that seem to be incredibly pleased about how prolific it is. So I have a couple of extra spots in my yard, and I am already thinking, oh my goodness, this is such a delicious peach. I think I need to get another tree, and I probably will. But then I thought maybe what I ought to do is try one of the Florida Prince varieties just to compare, so that I have one of each. So I may very well do that. And then for a couple of the other spots, I have in mind maybe getting an apricot tree. And that's because they need a few more chill hours than the peaches do. But I live in a little bit south of Tucson, and so I'm in 8B. And some of you up in Tucson, or maybe even further like in Phoenix or Mesa, you may have to look at different varieties. But the one that I'm looking at for the apricot is called the Katy, and there are a couple of others too, which I will put up on the screen. But I'm thinking that probably at some point, maybe in the fall, I will add 2 more trees to my home fruit orchard, and they will be another peach and an apricot tree. So hopefully I will be able to share that with you this fall. But I think gardening is one of those things where there is always another project and you're never quite done, and I think that's what makes it fun. So back to this peach variety that I'm working on right now, the Desert Gold peach. It was developed in the late 60s, and it grows really well, zone 7 through 9. So this would be a good one if you're up in Tucson. I know they've recently changed some of the USDA growing zones, and I think some of you in Phoenix and Mesa may be in 10 now. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you may want to go with a different variety. I think the Florida Prince does really well up there as far as peaches go, so you could try that one. Just keep in mind when you're wanting to add a fruit tree to your yard, the mature size of it, for one thing. I have gotten a lot of questions from people that say it's blocking the sidewalk, or it's touching the house, or it's shading out other plants in my yard and causing them not to grow very well, or whatever it may be. Just think about the spread of the canopy up above. Generally, a tree like this is going to be about 15 feet wide and probably just as tall. And so you want to check out what the size at maturity is, and you want to think about the soil requirements. You want to think about the water requirements, because some trees take a lot more water than others. So for instance, if you're growing citrus, you're going to be spending a lot more on your water bill than you would if you were growing a pomegranate. So all of it is different. But the other major important thing that you need to think about are those chill hours, because I don't want you to plant a tree and then get discouraged later because it's not working out. All right, enough chit chat. Let me get all of these peaches finished. I'm feeling that there are some that are still a little bit firm, so I may set those aside for some fresh eating rather than completely do all of them right now. So let's get busy with this. So this is what we have left. Not very many, so I think I'm going to set these aside so they're still pretty firm, and I think they'll keep for a little bit longer, but they're not that big really. Not as big as the massive peaches that you find at the grocery store. So I think we can handle eating those. Look at this massive bowl of peaches that I have cleaned. I'm so excited about this. So I am going to start cooking it for jam, and then set aside what I need for my cobbler. Now for these frozen peaches, so I froze them on this cookie sheet. I got them out just now. I have a Ziploc bag already labeled because I plan to put some more peaches in the freezer later of a different variety, so I want to make sure I know which variety these are. And I'm just going to scoop them off of here, just like this. See how nice and loose they are? Not sticking together at all. So I can use these later on for anything I want. If I want to make more jam, more cobbler, if I want to put them in smoothies, if I want to stew them, just about anything. I love doing this method because it is a great way to just freeze things and be able to get out little handfuls whenever you need them. I do it for fruits and vegetables alike, and from the sounds of it, from a lot of different comments on the short that I did earlier about my peaches, a lot of you also use this method, and it's great. Okay, so I think that's a nice big batch of that in here. to use later. Just look at that. That's gonna be so yummy. Now, lemon is pretty high in pectin, so you could just skip adding pectin to this. If you find that it's just not thickening up or hitting that gel phase, then you can add some powdered pectin if you like. If you decide to use the pectin, you're going to use 1 pouch of the liquid pectin. But I'm gonna see how this goes for me, and I'm gonna skip the pectin if I can. Simple is always better. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Although we aren't in the garden, we're still doing gardening tasks, and it's so fun to be able to share it with you. I'm Kara from So, Arizona. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy gardening.